Welcome everybody to the Modern Mystics podcast. I'm your host, Alana Kaivalya, and I'm so excited today to bring Emily Stewart into the podcast to talk to you about a very important topic. Emily is not only an extraordinary yoga teacher and fitness instructor in her own right, she's also a lead mentor in the Kaivalya Yoga Method Academy. She's a graduate of the Kaivalya Yoga Method Academy. And she has firsthand experienced what it's like to be a yoga teacher and fitness instructor in the industry. And she's decided that she's going to be the one to try and do things better. So I can't wait to introduce you to Emily and have her talk to us about how she's looking to improve the industry and the conditions for yoga teachers through founding a union for group fitness instructors and yoga teachers. So Emily, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me. And it's really interesting to hear, your introduction of me, because that is kind of how I see my trajectory to this point to have gone. Like so many people who come to Modern Mystics or TKYM, I was doing other jobs. I have, a degree from a private university, and I've just always been into yoga and always just really into studying bigger ideas than what's on the world, so to speak, and feeling interesting connections and trying to place them. And that led me to my yoga teacher training. The other big reason why I did the yoga teacher training was really because it gave me a way to connect with people on deeper ideas without like asking outright, like, do you believe in astrology? It kind of gives you like a little segue into a community without being so overt. And through that process, I actually felt empowered enough to travel abroad and start teaching yoga and writing. I was also writing abroad, and slowly but surely, the connection between like the physical self, community, and career for me became so strong that I became fully employed as a fitness instructor. It started, I think my first 3 certificates were boot camp yoga, Pilates. And now I've got cycling and active older adults and trauma-informed yoga. Most of it grew when I was living in Europe as an European citizen. So I really didn't have to worry so much about even, fitness insurance. I didn't have to have my own health insurance, and my money went into my pocket. Like there was very, at the beginning I made so little money, I didn't even have to pay taxes on my income. And I was able to develop a really strong career for myself, just grassroots, pounding the pavement, online, and it was really simple. And then I got back to the US, and I just immediately was stunned by, I guess, like how much I was paying in taxes. And I'm not saying anything about politics, but how little representation I felt like I had within the local government. How hard I was working for basically the same money, and very little of it was going into my pocket. The amount I was having to spend to simply exist as like a self-employed person or a hustler, a gig economy worker, I got really, really, really burnt out. And I said, I'm not going to keep doing this unless I actually am going to try to change the industry to make it better, because otherwise this cycle of burnout and fitness instructors is just like, it's ruining lives. It's ruining our students' lives, and it's ruining ours. So that's kind of where I got.
Yeah, I feel like it's really lucky in many ways that you had that juxtaposition of life in Europe as an instructor versus life in the US as an instructor. And this isn't to say that, an instructor in Europe won't have challenges as well, but just seeing that really stark contrast is so interesting. For myself, I've been a yoga teacher for more than 2 decades, and I really never questioned for many years, oh, this is just the way it's done. I really never questioned, oh, of course I should teach all those classes for free. Of course I should take the pay cut. Of course I can't afford health insurance. These were just the way you lived as a yoga instructor. And even though it came with an unbelievable amount of stress and worry and fear, because I don't care how many classes a week you teach at a studio, you will never be able to teach enough to make a decent living. You just can't. You know, the studio life is you're trading time for money. You can only fill the classes so much. You can't add a second class at that same hour. You've only got so many days and hours in the week, you know, and the reality is that on average, the full-time yoga instructor in America makes $35,000 a year. And that's teaching between 20 and 25 classes a week, which is about the max. And that's a lot of hustle for a little scratch. And so it's pretty amazing that you, very early on in your career, really hit on the fact that we should be able to do better, that we as professionals should have a professional ability to make more money, to charge more. We should be protected in ways that people in other industries are protected. So, you know, Emily, I know that this has been on your mind for a few years because we've been corresponding throughout, you know, this time for you. And I was very excited to hear that you are working on founding an actual union for yoga teachers and fitness instructors. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So for me, I think you really highlighted some reasons why. I think for me, the reason I've been able to be a full-time fitness instructor, and I also still, you know, write for people, is the fact that whatever you want to call it, gig or not, I realized I couldn't just work in studio situations, that if I wanted to live my life the way I wanted to offer my gifts to people and to help them the most that they needed, I wanted to be able to work in any way I needed, whether it was private clients, whether it's online, whether it's in studios. And that propensity to earn my income serving like in a way that best serves myself and my clients isn't supported. And so basically the biggest way I thought it wasn't supported was I was being, and it's just like true whether you apply for a mortgage, I mean, any step of the line, my choice in fitness instruction as a hustling is seen negatively. So in January of 2020, I was beat. I was physically ruined. I was so sick of trying to deal with my group fitness coordinators who would hire me and fire me on a whim. I was so sick of having no oversight for myself or my industry, no accountability, no one to go to with complaints, no one to go to prove my worth. You know, I was sick of the competitive nature of my people who I love, group fitness instructors. So I called the AFL-CIO and I said, am I not an employee? No, am I not a tax-paying citizen? Why can't I just unionize my people? We're all doing the same skill. We're doing it all over the country. Why can't, you know, we get together on group healthcare? This whole union thing has been around for a while. And I was told from the get-go that you can't unionize people from different employment statuses, like W-2, 1099 cash, sole proprietor, in different geographies. And to me, that didn't make sense because, like I said, I don't care if I'm in Wyoming or New York. I'm going to teach a Kaivalya yoga method foundational class, and I'm going to account for my students there, adjust it. So I kind of didn't take no for an answer, and I kept looking for more solutions. Eventually, they brought me to the Machinists Union here in Seattle because the machinists have a history of working with non-traditional style employees, still not quite our method. And the union has really helped me understand what it means to be in a union, what the world of union looks like. And it's still not that easy. I mean, we've gone through like 3 different iterations of what our form might look like, but the number one thing for us is providing benefits to group fitness instructors, no matter what style of fitness they teach and how, licensing group fitness instructors so that we might be recognized as professional, creating systems of transparency and accountability therein, like other licensed professionals, and really looking at the industry as a whole that how has group fitness, an industry where people interact with each other's bodies, and made a ton of money doing it, been allowed to grow in the way it has?
Yeah, because it hasn't, I mean, one of the things that I started realizing, because again, I spent so many years just boots on the ground, going from class to class, eating 3 meals a day in my car, not sleeping very well because I had to get up early for the class in the morning, and I was teaching the late class the night before. And I never questioned it because this is the only professional career I've ever had in my whole life. So I just thought, oh, this is how it's done. This is totally normal. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who don't question it. And also because the industry itself hasn't, unfortunately or unfortunately, and this isn't a judgment on the industry, it's just the way it is. The industry itself hasn't grown to value its most important commodity, which is the instructor. That somehow the instructor is negotiable, should just be grateful to teach, should teach for free oftentimes, should show up early in an unpaid fashion,
Yes.
open the studio to log in students, should stay late in an unpaid fashion to answer all the students' questions. And I know that there's a lot of trickiness, particularly for yoga instructors, because this is a spiritual endeavor. This is a heart endeavor. We are here to serve, but that doesn't ever mean that we should be taken advantage of. So Emily, what I would love for you to do, because I bet that people listening are like you and like me, and perhaps, doing their selfless service as a yoga instructor, not even realizing what an actual career person should expect by being employed with their profession. So what kinds of iniquities are there? What kinds of things what kind of wrongs are you trying to right for people like us?
So let's talk about, really, this is an issue of human rights. Let's just talk about it like that. So like, as a human, if your employer asks you to work, they got to pay you, so this going in early, staying late, recertifying, I think, is another thing. I think a lot of what's gone on here, and this is one reason why, I am obviously biased. I'm a TKYM graduate, but you train us to use this anywhere. You're not making us pay to take your training and then possibly employing us and maybe making us sign a non-compete agreement where we're not allowed to teach your yoga anywhere else. That's happening. That's an abuse of power at like a human rights level. You can't tell your employee that they have to pay for your training and then make them teach for free or low cost as your hours, and then not guarantee you a job and limit you from going somewhere else. All of that's unlawful. Next, if, and this is something that's come onto fruition here in 2020 with these COVID times, if you're asking an instructor to come into a studio and potentially put their own health at risk or use their own body to work, you should be giving them health insurance. And for me, I don't want these small boutique studios to run out of money. I know the reason why us instructors have been hurt by the industry is because the industry itself is a little bit inflated, maybe. I don't want to ruin the dream of someone to be able to start a yoga studio and afford to do it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm starting a union, is if we can recognize ourselves as professional, we can let the boutique studio do what it wants, pay us the adequate minimum wage for the hours worked. We can get together and get our own health care and not expect that employer to pay it. So I just feel like I need to say that. The other thing is practices for hiring, firing, auditioning. There's a lot of discriminatory practices here that aren't being recognized right now. Who's watching your audition? Do you get auditioned? If your class isn't going well, like, what has everyone agreed on what going well means? Are you given a performance review? Or, is it so many people just cannot depend on this industry because they're hired and fired on a whim. And it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle, because then, like for me, I've done it. I've been paid $20 a class here, even though I love those students, then offered $50 a class here. You know, I didn't show up the next week. I let them know, but I don't blame instructors for even not doing that. And again, it's like we're the corners cut, and then we have to make really dramatic, drastic decisions for that. And there's no one else here that we can air these grievances to or get adequate advice. So those are kind of all issues that we're looking to solve. And the final thing is, you know, I hate to say, but you can ask any yogi, probably they've been injured in a yoga class, and sometimes by their instructor.
Right.
And vice versa. I've heard many stories of yogis being injured by their students or their teacher trainers. Mm-hmm. And that has to stop too.
Yeah. How do we stop that, Emily?
So that's where it really gets into licensing, you know, and the industry as a whole. If we license instructors, whether it's on a federal level or a state level, hopefully those will blend together or start that way. It means that we're held to certain standards. We have to test into this, both basic, you know, leading groups and movement, as well as yoga. If we violate the terms of our licenses are removed. If we're not sure about how to morally or ethically conduct ourselves in a situation, there's an oversight body. We can ask for advice. If something happens, there's an oversight body. We can ask for advice. And there are standards, protocols, and methods for handling this situation that everyone in our yoga industry agrees upon. And it might be, you know, there's different models for this. You know, we look at massage therapy, that's very much a state, federal, government level license. We look at the American Bar Association of Lawyers. That's a voluntary organization that self-polices. Right now, I'm not sure what it needs to look like, but I can tell you, like, Just Yoga Alliance and these other marketing bodies, which is really what a lot of these athletic organizations are that people certify with, like, that's not enough.
Right.
Because they're all in it on their own, competing for us.
Absolutely. And there's really no accountability. I mean, I think the thing that comes with licensing is accountability. And this is really where, you know, your passion and my passion intersect. I've done a lot of work in the creation of my online teacher training program to raise the bar for what it means to be a completely well-educated yoga instructor, because having created and led teacher trainings for some of the largest companies across the country for 15 years, I saw how many holes there were. And I saw that there really is no accountability. There really is no oversight. And for anyone listening, if this sounds scary, I mean, yeah, it can be a little scary, but it's also a tremendous personal responsibility that we have as instructors. None of us wants to hurt anybody else. None of us wants to be hurt. And this is how we gather together and say, look, we are all going to do our best to ensure that we are well trained enough to mitigate this particular issue. We are all going to do our best to work together to raise the safety, the trust, the security, not only that we have in each other, but that students have in us. And this is something that many industries do. You mentioned massage therapy. Massage therapists have to be licensed. Your hairstylist and esthetician have to be licensed. They have to actually pass a test that says they know how to cut hair. And if they don't pass that test, they can't cut your hair. Now, I'm certainly grateful for that. We also have industries like mental health professionals who must be licensed in order to curate and care for the mental health of their patients and clients. I think this is a good thing. This is something that we all want to uphold. We want to make sure that our doctors, our lawyers, our mental health professionals, our hairstylists, our massage therapists have this neutral, grander third party saying, you know what, this person has done the work, this person has gotten the education, This person is qualified to do what they say they're qualified to do. And just in case they're not, we're going to hold them to this standard and wait until they do have that qualification. In my mind, this is one of the most important things that needs to shift and change, especially with the yoga industry, because right now it's completely unregulated. There is no accreditation. There is no licensing. There's no national oversight body at all. Registry body or registry organizations, they're trade organizations. They're not here to oversee. So this is such important work, Emily, and I so honor you for doing it.
Thank you. And I think the other thing is, to me, these go part and parcel together. As soon as the world can identify that we are skilled professionals, that means that I can be Emily Stewart, teaching a studio, teaching my private clients, doing my writing, teaching whatever thing I want to teach, and I will have a space in this union where I can amalgamate all of this wonderful work as a member of my community, see the actual hours I'm working, and receive protection and security from that. You know, I love the idea of the American dream. I love the idea of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, but we have to be able to create that bed if we're going to lie in it. Because right now there's a hole in it, and you lie in it and you fall right through, and then you end up back, you know, in an office job, which no offense for that, but if you got your yoga certificate, you want to be teaching yoga. So we need to be able to make a space where professionals get recognized as such and are supported as such. And I want it to be as flexible as the certificate we trained in. I don't think that's too much to ask.
No, I don't think it's too much to ask, and I absolutely hold that vision with you. You know, I very much support the work that you're doing. I think that it's really critically important work, and I think that it's absolutely time for this change. You know, we are living in a very extraordinary time this year in 2020, where it seems like pretty much everything has gone through upheaval, and everything is different, and everything is being called into question. And I think, whereas before, even just, you know, last year, it wasn't called into question that potentially the yoga instructor could be hurt teaching. I know for myself, I was injured teaching many times throughout my career, whether it just be because I was demonstrating too many classes in a day, whether it was because you know, I had an injury and then I injured myself further by teaching. There's so many ways in which the yoga teacher, him or herself, can be injured. And, you know, I think it was just accepted as part of the career choice before, but we have something really salient and really important right now that is bringing to the forefront how important the health of the instructor is, and that is our current pandemic, that is COVID, where teachers are being asked to go back to teaching their studio classes, and that's fraught with so much emotional, financial questions and challenges. Many people are out of work. They want to go back to work, but is that environment safe? Many people don't want to go back because the environment is not safe, and so they are losing their jobs as a result. So let's talk about how this, what we're going through right now, is really centering the health of the yoga teacher in this current pandemic.
Yeah, and I think also to answer that directly, as well as look what's happened for any size gym, whether we're talking a big chain or a boutique yoga studio. This isn't just yoga, this is really any gym or space. The ones where the instructors have been able to pivot quickly to teach from home are the ones that have stayed in business. So all of a sudden, if you look at like a big gym situation, group fitness instructors are considered the lowest of the low, or little rat spinning on the wheel, because probably people buy their big gym membership and they get free classes. But as you and I both know, a yoga instructor who teaches a great yoga class in a gym will change lives. I think even more sometimes than the studio space. But all of a sudden, we are the only value. We are the only value in COVID times that these people, no one can go in and lift weights. And the studios that are able to keep members by offering online classes have stayed in business. But at what cost?
Yeah.
huge copyright infringement violations, even potentially more cause for injury, because us instructors are getting paid the same amount of money. We're filming from our own devices. Oftentimes we're having to live stream on social media, as well as, Zoom classes, which means that we're basically doing 3-4 times the work and duplicating ourselves, because it'll live on the website. People can watch it on demand for the same price. So I know that we're not commuting anymore, but we're still planning the classes, and we're now duplicating ourselves. We're being asked to put ourselves out of the job in a lot of ways right now. That's before we go back in. Now, when we go back in, we're being asked to go into a studio space, teach, and let me put it in perspective. Here in Washington, when they redid the gym reopening laws, none of it matched the group fitness scenario. It was like, if people go in and get on a treadmill, it's like this, and all the other groups need to be this size. Group fitness instructors weren't even mentioned. So I was luckily, through my affiliation with the machinist, able to sit on the board of the COVID reopening guidelines. And I said, there's this whole industry you don't even realize. There's whole gyms, all they do is group fitness classes. What you're saying here doesn't match. Then, in the newest guidelines, which I totally support my government here in Seattle, Washington, don't get me wrong, but the newest guidelines are like, in a certain area of space, you can have 6 students, not counting the fitness instructor. So to me, this is really odd, because we've all recognized, us scientists as well, that it's safe to have this number of people in this space. Somehow the group fitness instructor is impervious to being unsafe, because they're allowed to just wander throughout, as we should do, and we're a good yoga instructor or whatever, wander throughout the people. There's no mention of healthcare being provided. If you're going to be a fitness instructor going into a COVID space, what if you get sick? There's no protections if you get sick. If you get sick, you're not paid. We know that about our job. You don't show, you're not paid. There's no vacation time. I'm lucky enough to get sick leave in Washington because that's a state law here. But even then, if I teach 1 hour at one studio a week, it takes me 40 weeks to get 1 hour of sick leave. I got none in COVID. I got a little bit.
Wow.
So, while I'm stoked that we've been recognized as invaluable, and maybe for the first time, a lot of us have had students say, if it wasn't for you, I would have gone crazy during these times. I've gotten that more. Actually, though, we're still being systemically undervalued, and we're being put even more at risk. And I'll give you an article to look up. Another woman named Emily, her name's Emily Collinson. She worked for Solid Core Pilates Studio in Washington, D.C., and they decided to reopen, and they did not take care of the COVID restrictions, guidelines. They kind of did, but when you actually got into the situation, you realized the instructor wasn't being protected. Emily refused to work, was fired, and now she's opening a lawsuit. And it's not just, the funny thing is, when these things come to light, people are like, how could you not follow COVID guidelines? And we're like, how could you not follow any OSHA, health and safety regulations? Oh, that's because they don't match your industry. Oh, that's because your industry isn't actually recognized, on a higher health and safety standard level, or on a higher tax level, or regulation. There's no sustainability in it at all. So COVID is a great opportunity for us to highlight how these little things are an example of bigger things.
But also to recognize our inherent value. One of the things I teach about all the time with my students, especially in my upward facing business academy, is that you are valuable. The work that you do is valuable. And I think more than any other time, whether it is because students are texting or reaching out to us, that they are so grateful for what I do or what we do, we're seeing our value, whether it's because we're seeing the hubbub around places not being able to open or trying to open because people really want to go back to their classes. We're seeing our value. And Emily, before we close out on the podcast here today, I just wanted to really hit home with the fact that, we've discussed over the last 20 or 30 minutes that we've been on, how important it is that not only that we value ourselves, but also that we start to recognize where the iniquities are so that we can fix them. But the thing that you're doing, that is so critically important for any of this to be fixed is you are getting us together. You're asking us to, you're asking us to help each other. You're asking us to band together and stand up together and say, look, if it's just me as an individual, if it's just me that says, I'm afraid to work during the pandemic, I have no power. But if it's 10,000 of us, if it's 100,000 of us saying, no, we are valuable, we deserve to have this professional experience because we work so hard, we are deeply educated, we are deeply committed, we absolutely deserve the same rights as every other worker here in America. That is where our power lies. And so I'm very excited for the work that you're doing, Emily, and putting together this union.
That's such a good point. And a lot of the reason why this has gotten this bad, I don't want to be hyperbolic, but it really is pretty bad, is because we've been forced to compete with each other.
Yes.
And we've been told not to trust each other.
Right.
Because we had no security.
Right.
So, I started this organization. Yeah, my personal experience was painful, as was yours. But I actually started it because every time I see another group fitness instructor at one of the places I teach, I just really want to be like, have you had that student, or did you struggle with the sound system today? Or where'd you get your certificate? Or, let's go out for coffee after your next class. Like that's, we are special humans. We are really, really special that we would undertake this. And if you're listening to this, you're willing to go there or you're willing to stay there. So I love group fitness instructors. I love yoga teachers. And it's time that we take care of each other. We don't need to be told that we don't deserve each other's respect and love anymore, because it's not true.
Absolutely, Emily, and I'm here every step of the way to help you to do it. So
you do love.
Yeah, there's none but love here, girl. So I know that people can find you obviously in the Kaivalya Yoga Method Academy because you are one of our lead mentors. So when you join us in the online program, you will get lots of opportunity to hang out with Emily and get to know her better. But where else can people find you, and how can they learn more about this important work that you're doing?
Yes, so there's like the obvious, our website, GFI-U, Group Fitness Instructors United, GFI-U, GFI-united.org. www.gfi-groupfitnessinstructors-united.org. We're also the same handle on Instagram. We have a private Facebook group because a lot of what we talk about is sensitive. So you could join that just looking it up, Group Fitness Instructors United. I do ask if you are currently an instructor, because we need to be careful about, who all we're involving in these discussions. But listen, worst comes to worst, like I live and breathe this. Just find me on Facebook, probably through TKYM is the easiest. You could even just Google my name. There's been some press out about me. Emily Stewart, that's with EWART and Stewart. Find me, friend me, and send me a message when you friend me. Let me know what your question is, just so I can, kind of cut to the chase. Yeah, and then I have my website too, where you can learn more kind of about my history, and I've spoken at TEDx, kind of related to this stuff. That is ahumandoing.org. Are you doing what supports your human? And org, you'll see all my websites have org. Why? Because we're in it together. We're an organization. Okay. So any of those ways.
Awesome. Emily, thank you so much for joining the podcast today and for sharing us these valuable thoughts in this incredible conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for giving me the space and for supporting us, Alana. It means a lot to me.